I can still remember being a happy family, once upon a time. Thinking back to a year ago, I remember the summer trips we would take as a family. Me, my wife Lynn, and our 7-year-old son, Kyle. We would travel to the lake, or at least that's what we used to call it. It was an old limestone quarry, around 30 minutes away from our small town of Blue Ridge, Wyoming. The quarry was deeply cut into the top of a large hill, and due to some incorrect planning from the Mountain Quarries Company, a subsidiary of the Pacific Portland Cement Company, they dug straight into a pressurized underwater cave system, which resulted in the entire mine flooding, followed soon by its complete shutdown. This left a large, untouched, pristine body of water spanning at least 200 meters between the straight-cut walls of the quarry. This beautiful, unnatural lake sat right on the edge of a large evergreen forest. However, it was close to the main road, it had great signal, and flat open areas. So this now untouched and unclaimed spot became a massive hit for our town, a new and perfect camping site. And my wife, well, she absolutely loved the outdoors. She couldn't get enough of it, always pestering me to take her down to the lake for a night under the stars. And this was a trait she passed on to our son, and they were always running around outside, catching frogs or bugs, rescuing everything they could get their hands on. I cannot even remember the exact number of baby birds that they would bring home and demand I help them raise. And I could never say no to the pair. One-on-one maybe, but when they ganged up on me, no, I always folded faster than wet cardboard. And then it happened. We had just spent the night at the lake, the bright morning rays illuminating the sun in a dazzling array of pinks and oranges. Several minutes ago, Lynn left on her morning stroll around the lake, but something was wrong. I saw Lynn running out of the tree line, out of breath, sweating hard, with this strange, unsettled look in her eye. She didn't say anything but ran right over to Kyle. She grabbed him, lifting him up into her arms, and ran over to her old Jeep Wrangler, threw him in the back seat, and jumped in herself. I tried to ask what was wrong, but she just said in a panicked tone, "Get in!" I quickly got into the car, and before I could even close the door, she slammed on the gas. "Damn it, Lynn, what are you doing?" I asked, confused and a little bit angry, since she had just abandoned all of our camping equipment. She paused for a moment and said in a quiet but panicked voice, We just had to get out of there." "Why?" I asked, confused. She would never normally act like this, so I honestly had no idea what to make of it. And then she stammered out, It was in the... And then everything went dark. I awoke to find myself lying on a soft surface with a rhythmic beep, beep, beep next to my right ear. My whole body ached, and I struggled to open my eyes. Finally, they cracked open, letting in a blinding white light. The beeping got louder and faster. And then I felt something cold grab onto my wrist, and a low whisper next to me. "Calm down, Mr. Finch. You're okay. You're safe." Eventually, my eyes adjusted to the light, showing a young woman leaning over me, dressed in a classic nurse's outfit. I tried to speak, but I couldn't say a word. Something was down my throat. I started to panic. I had to get it out of my throat, or I would surely suffocate. The beeping grew louder and erratic as I struggled. My arms felt like jelly as they reached up and grabbed at my face. I felt this horrid, thick tendril going down my throat, pulsing as it forced something into my lungs. The nurse screamed, something I couldn't make out, and then I felt more hands pressing down on me, trying to stop me. And the damn beeping just kept getting faster and louder. I then finally managed to yank that damn thing, and it was slithering down my throat, right out. And it was followed by the most unimaginable pain, and then a sharp pinch in my left arm, and then everything faded back to darkness. I awoke again, but this time my vision was a lot clearer, and I could see that I was strapped down with thick padded cuffs to a clean white hospital bed. But at least that horrid tendril was gone from my throat, and the beeping was a slow, steady rhythm again. And I could now tell that that beeping came from my heart rate monitor. I called out, but my voice felt wrong. It was rough and it hurt to speak. The same young nurse as before slowly entered my view, hovering above me. "Whoa there, no talking. You damn near tore out your voice box of that little stunt earlier," she said in a stern but kind voice. She paused for a second and spoke again. "You're in the Blue Ridge Hospital. Your car was T-boned on Blackwater Road, just outside of town. You're lucky to be alive. Your spleen ruptured, and both your right leg and right arm were broken." I tried to ask a question, but she just shushed me. "No questions now. Rest and the doctor will come talk to you later." I blinked and then felt a severe drowsiness hit me. And before I knew it, that darkness overtook me again. The next few days were a nightmare. The nurses were kind, but they refused to tell me anything about the crash, or what happened to my wife or son. Eventually, though, the doctor came to check up on me. "Ah, good. Your vitals seem fine. And your bones had a clean break and it's healing nicely. You should be back on your feet in no time, Mr. Finch," he stated in a clinical tone. "I don't care about that. Where's Lynn? Where's Kyle?" I demanded. A look of sadness overcame the doctor's face. "Mr. Finch, please, you're still recovering. We can talk." "Damn it, Doc! I need to know. Please." I was begging him, and he let out this short sigh. "Mr. Finch, your son is fine. Actually, we're not really sure how, but he barely suffered any injuries at all. Just a few lacerations, a mild concussion, and a sprained shoulder." I felt this massive weight leave my chest, and I could finally, after the days of torment, relax. "He's fine." I smiled, and then as soon as that smile came, it fled, as this dark thought wormed its way into the forefront of my mind, and a pit formed in my stomach, as dread filled my heart, and the beeping started to get erratic again, and I stammered out, What about Lynn?" The doctor took a moment to steel himself before saying his next words in the most clinical and professional way he could. "I'm sorry, Mr. Finch. She suffered a severe head injury which led to a hemorrhagic stroke. She passed away last night at 8:32. I'm so sorry for your loss." I felt everything go cold and all the color drain from the world. The next few days flew in a dark malaise. I couldn't focus on anything, and I lost my drive to even try. The next event I could even remember was the day Kyle came into my room. "Daddy!" he yelled as he all but threw himself onto my bed. His weight came crashing into me, and I could feel my body protesting against the pain. But he hugged me tightly, his warm, tiny arms pressing tightly into me. Even though the pain in my side was all but unbearable, I wouldn't even think for a moment of pushing him away. Instead, I wrapped my good arm around him and pulled him tighter. Then he said, "I missed you. And the mean old ladies, they wouldn't let me see you or Mom." Those words stung even more than my injuries. I was fighting back tears as I held him. But then something in me snapped back into place, and the cold darkness flew away. "Don't worry, son. We'll get home soon. I promise." "Daddy, I'm so glad to see you, but what happened to Mama? Those mean ladies, they won't tell me anything. They just seem, sad whenever I ask about it." I took a deep breath and said with tears staining my eyes, "Kyle, God needed Mom for a very special mission, so he called her back to heaven so she could become one of his angels." Kyle seemed confused, but asked sincerely, "Then can we go to heaven too?" "Not yet, son. But one day, when it's our time, we'll get called up too, and we can see her again." "But when'll that be? I want to see her now," Kyle complained, and I just hugged him closer. "I'm so sorry, son, but that won't be for a long time. My son was a very smart kid, and by that point he caught up on what I was saying. And I could see the tears in his eyes as he started to cry. And I just held him close until he eventually fell asleep in my arms. The next few months passed in a blur, but at least now I had regained my drive. I had something to fight for, and I fought hard. I pushed through the physical therapy and was eventually back on my feet. As the months passed, I managed to adjust to taking care of Carl all by myself. It was hard, and I missed Lynn every day. But humans are good at adjusting. With my demanding job, I had to hire a maid to clean the house and started to order takeout more often than was probably healthy for me and Kyle. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed, and Kyle was the greatest child you could ever imagine. You see, I really struggled to get through this year. But he was different. He was stronger. He would help me. He would make his own lunches when I forgot. He would take the bus to and from school, and his grades never dropped. He truly was an amazing son. Then early one morning, when I was getting breakfast ready, he ran into the kitchen and approached me. I could tell he wanted to ask me something, and he didn't know quite how to approach it. So I engaged first. "Good morning, buddy. What's up?" And he replied, "Well, I know you've been busy, but I wanted to ask if, well, would it be okay if we went back to the lake again?" My smile froze. "The lake?" "Yeah. I mean, you've been away a lot, and I've been trying to play with my friends, but it's not the same. We used to go there all the time, and I'd really love to go again." I paused for a moment and thought to myself, wow, I am just the worst dad. This kid used to go out every day with his mother. They loved the outdoors. And it's been a whole year, and I've been so busy at work I haven't taken him out once. I could feel my heart breaking. So I replied in the only way I could, "Sure, buddy, let's go this Saturday." His smile brightened the room. I had not seen him this happy in a long time, and it even lightened my own mood. Although the second he left to get on the bus, a dark dread crept into my heart. The lake. I honestly never wanted to go back there. And there were too many memories there, and too much I didn't want to face. But if it's to keep that boy smiling, well, I'll do anything. The rest of that week went by quickly. I bought a whole new set of camping gear, packed snacks, and everything you need to make s'mores, all the while mentally preparing myself to go back to that lake. And then the fateful day arrived. We awoke early, 6 in the morning, fumbled everything into the car, and then made the short drive to the lake. It was a bright and clear day, easily 30 degrees Celsius, with a cool wind that blew through the trees, rustling the leaves. By all accounts, it was a perfect day. And we drove up to the old mining operation. Its hard-packed dirt and chiseled limestone walls greeted us, and we looked over the dark yet surprisingly clear waters of the lake. It always surprised me just how the water never got stagnant, even though it always sat still. And the rest of that day was actually fun. It felt like old times again. We ran through the forest, we caught every bug we could find, and we even found this old slimy toad underneath a small berry bush. And all too soon the golden rays of the sun started to creep behind the hills in the distance. I was completely exhausted. I mean, keeping up with an 8-year-old is hard work. I just cannot understand how they fit so much energy into such a small body. So we headed back to the car, and we started to unpack the tents. Of course, we didn't set up right on the edge of the water. That would be slightly silly, as I would hate to wake up, leave the tent, and plunge straight into the waters first thing in the morning. So we headed a ways away from the lake. We set up the camp in a small clearing in between some old firs. It was always better to set up slightly outside of the old mining area, as the dirt was so hard-packed you would really struggle to hammer in the pegs of the tent. So after setting up the camp, we looked around, gathered some large stones, and built a roaring campfire. We sat around, ate some snacks, made some s'mores, and then as the full moon hung brightly in the sky, I could finally see Kyle's eyes slowly droop close. I gently scooped him up into my arms and carried him to his tent. As I tucked him into the sleeping bag, he said softly to me, still half asleep, "Daddy, thanks. Today I almost felt like Mom was back." Those words stung my heart. But I knew we would have to come back to the lake more often. He was such a great kid, but that didn't mean he didn't miss Lynn, and I needed to do a better job. I slowly crept out of his tent, making as little noise as possible, smothered the fire, and then crawled into my own tent. And the moment my head hit the pillow, I was out. But then I suddenly jolted awake. "Daddy, quick! Come over here!" I heard Kyle call from the distance. I rubbed my eyes, still groggy. Kids. It really should be impossible for them to have this much energy. I slowly unzipped myself from the sleeping bag, pushed open the flap of the tent, and saw it was still midnight. The kid basically got like 2 hours of sleep, and he's out there already. But I can't really blame him, though. It's been a year since any real outing, after all. So I grabbed my flashlight, flicked it on, and sending out this thin beam of light into the dark woods. And then I headed out into the cool night air. I didn't really need the flashlight. It was a full moon, and most of the forest was visible. But it never hurts to have, I guess. I was about to call out to him when I heard it again, even further away. "Daddy, quick! Come over here!" he called out from the direction of the lake. I slowly trudged my way through the underbrush. "Kyle, where are you? Daddy, quick! Come over here!" I finally emerged from the tree line, looking out over the lake, its waters pitch black under the moonlight. And then I heard a splash and a giggle, and I saw Kyle leisurely paddling in the lake. And I mean, the lake was deep, and I mean really deep. It's an old mine, so it easily went down 50 meters. We would never let Kyle ever swim in the lake unsupervised, just to be safe. "Kyle, what do you think you're doing? Get out of there now!" I called out over the water, but he just giggled and said playfully, "Daddy, quick! Come over here!" I was absolutely furious, and just as I was about to jump in and drag him back to shore, when I noticed it. "Daddy, quick! Come over here!" he said again. The same words, said in the exact same way, like straight from a tape recorder. I slowly moved the beam of the torch onto the boy. He looked just like Kyle, exactly the same. Maybe I'm just being crazy? This must just be him finally letting loose after keeping his feelings bottled up for so long, right? "Come on, Kyle, let's get you dried off," I called out again. The boy cocked his head to the side, staring up at me, and said, "Daddy, quick! Come over here!" His bright green eyes reflected back the light from the torch. And I froze. Kyle has brown eyes. The thing in the lake slowly lifted its hands out of the water, beckoning me in. "Daddy, quick! Come over here!" it said, copying my son perfectly. And then I heard the voice in the distance. "Daddy, are you looking for me?" I froze for a brief moment, and then I ran. I burst through the bushes, trampled plants along the way, and I didn't care. I ran with everything I had, straight back to the camp. I burst through the tree line, and I saw Kyle's head poking out of his tent. He was rubbing his eyes, his brown eyes. I ran towards him, yanked him out of the tent, and sprinted to the car. I threw him into the backseat and grabbed the front door. "Daddy, quick! Come over here!" I heard a faint call in the distance, and a pair of glowing green eyes staring at me from the lake. I jumped in and hit the gas. 20 minutes later, we were home. Kyle was confused and a little bit terrified. "Daddy, what's wrong? Why did we have to go?" I looked over at him and said, "Well, son, it's nothing. It's just the lake. Well, we can't go there anymore, but we'll find a new place to camp." He looked up at me confused, but said, "Fine, I'm going back to sleep." He gave me a hug and turned to go to his bedroom. But then I saw it as he left. Something faint. So now I'm sitting here in my bedroom, making this recording, dark thoughts swirling in my head, because as Carl entered his bedroom, he opened it with his right hand, not his left like he normally would, and for the briefest of moments, I saw a flash of green in his eyes. I'm no longer sure that that thing across the hall from me is my son, and if he's not, how do I get him back?